Good afternoon and welcome to the 8th Annual Radio, TV, Film Pro Perspectives panel at UW Oshkosh. I'm your host, Brooke Bayer. Thank you for joining us live on 90.3 WRST FM Oshkosh and Titan TV channel 9757. During today's program, we'll be joined by 3 successful radio, TV, film alumni to discuss a variety of topics, ranging from their time at UW Oshkosh to their success in finding a job in the media industry. For those of you listening or watching at home, please feel free to join the conversation via Twitter and send us your questions for the panel by using hashtag RTFPro. Now, without further ado, let's introduce this year's panel. Our first panelist is a senior broadcast specialist with Wisconsin Public Radio, which is a fancy way of saying he makes programming sound nice. He has been recording, engineering, composing, and designing sound for the network since 2005. His first broadcast gig was at a polka radio station in Kewaunee, Wisconsin. He founded Man Mater Multimedia in 2012, producing underground award-winning audio shorts that have been exhibited in London, Dublin, Chicago, and Washington, D.C. Please welcome Joe Hardtke. Our next panelist is a freelance sports director with Pac-12 Network and Pac12.com. Earned a bachelor's degree in radio, TV, film from UW Oshkosh in 1982. She serves as a lead director of women's basketball in the Pac-12 Women's Tournament. She has traveled around the world producing award-winning live events, including the Olympic Games in Athens, Torino, Beijing, London, and Sochi. Please give a warm welcome to Lori Burns-Brooks. And last but certainly not least, we have a UW Oshkosh graduate from the class of 1983. He has worked in radio, TV, film as both talent and production specialist for over 30 years. He has appeared in numerous movies and hit TV shows, including The Big Bang Theory, NCIS, Castle, Scandal, Major Crimes, and web series like This Isn't Working for ABC Digital and Sing It for YouTube Red. In between jobs, he has worked for 13 years in marketing and promotions for the syndicated news magazine Extra. Everyone, please welcome Karl T. Wright. To provide a little more background for our audience, let's start by talking a bit about your jobs. Could each of you give us a brief overview of your responsibilities for your current position? We'll begin with Joe.
As a technical director with Wisconsin Public Radio, I do exactly what was mentioned earlier. I make things sound nice. So everything from live concerts, from classical music to blues music to folk music to a little bit of pop here and there. I do predominantly talk programming. This morning I just actually did a live remote from Wausau before driving over to here. And on top of that, occasionally I get to do sound design for radio programs, occasionally cartoons, and other broadcast elements like that. Basically trying to make the most compelling radio content I can, and just by using sound and making sure it's recorded well.
Lori?
In addition to what Brooke mentioned, working for the Pac-12 Network and Pac12.com, they are my primary employer, but I also work for Turner Sports, which is a division of Turner Broadcasting. I work on the NBA on TNT, did a show last week, I'm doing a show next week for them. I was on staff there for 20 years, and now I work for them as a freelancer. Additionally, I work for NBC Sports as an associate director on their Olympic coverage. Every now and again they call me for another assignment, but I'm usually booked on something else. When I work for Pac-12 Network, I'm a show director. When I work for Turner Sports, TNT, I work either as a show assistant director, associate director, or a field producer.
Very cool.
And my responsibilities are finding another job. I am an actor. And so as an actor, you are constantly looking for another gig. So I worked on Conan just the other day. That'll be on in a couple of weeks. I'm always auditioning, always looking for something. I work in voiceover work as well. But before that, I was a hyphenate, and that's kind of what you have to do in this business. You're never just one thing. So I worked in affiliate relations for Extra, as they said earlier. And so that meant that I dealt with all the stations around the country that aired the syndicated show. And I would give them promos and the information that they needed to make sure that the show was being promoted properly. And I would go out and do auditions and book shows and so forth. So it is a fun, but it's also a challenging life, because you never know when you're going to have another job. It's cyclical, it goes up and down, and that's something that you guys are going to have to deal with on a regular basis in this business, because you're going to go from job to job. It's rare. I mean, I worked at Extra for 13 years, and people said that in this business is very unusual, especially in LA, to work at any place for more than a couple of years. So keeping your nose down, or keeping your head down, and doing the work and not causing any drama is always a good way to have a job for long term.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Yeah.
Now I'd like to take you back to your time at UWO. When did you know that you guys wanted to be part of RTF? We'll start with Lori.
From day one. It's why I chose the school, in fact. I didn't know really what I wanted to do. Education was kind of what I was focusing on as a junior in high school. But as a senior in high school, I watched a lot of television. I listened to radio a lot, and I was kind of a news junkie now, and I learned about the program from my guidance counselor, who frankly was kind of a dope, because he told me about it, but then he said, "What are you going to do, host a game show?" And so don't challenge me like that, because guess what? I came here and did something. But truthfully, even though he's kind of a dope, he guided me here. And from very early on, when I came for testing and whatnot, I saw the facilities, saw the program, and I said, yeah, this is the place.
Perfect. Joe?
I was 10. I went to my first radio station at the age of 10, but even before that, I was destroying my mom's home stereo by sampling and cutting and re-looping tapes and just destroying everything then analog audio related. But I knew I wanted to do something with sound, and when I saw the radio station in Algoma, Wisconsin, WOMA, and I was 10, I was like, yeah, I definitely need to do this. I started working in radio when I was 16 at my hometown radio station, which was the Boca station that we mentioned earlier, and immediately started looking for colleges that had a major that would allow me to get immediately all fingers, all pies, and do all different types of things so I could discover if indeed this is what I wanted to do, and Oshkosh was the place for that. And absolutely, I played with every piece of equipment I could here and came back to my soul's intent, the road I'm on, and that is the butchering and, and editing and designing and production of audio.
Carl?
How did I find my way to RTF? I believe it was watching stand-up on, I think Bill Cosby was on a show when I was 7 years old, and I said, I want to do that. I want to make people laugh. And then I found out that those comedy albums, you guys don't know anything about this, but there used to be comedy albums, and we would listen to them over and over again, and the people would laugh at the same time. I said, I want to do that. And someone pointed out that they don't always laugh at the same time. And I went, oh, I don't want to do that then. I'll be an actor. And so that's when I decided at 7 years old I wanted to be an actor. And I found my way here. It's a funny story. I was on my way to Northwestern, and I missed the turnoff and ended up in Oshkosh. And so no one's laughing. Whoa!
I laughed.
That's like, thank you.
I laughed, and that's why we've been friends for 34 years.
Thank you,
I
exactly.
laugh at him.
No, no, I actually came here, visited a couple of schools, and I came here because I got such a warm response. I remember I walked in, I was saying to someone, I walked into this building, and Ron Hudson, some of the old people will remember him, was one of the teachers here, and I had missed the tour. Everybody had taken a tour of the campus, and I got here late, and he said, do you want a tour? I said, yeah, sure. So he was running around, opening up doors and getting people to get keys, and people were inviting me to parties later. Come on, get drunk with us. Wow, no one's ever invited me to get drunk before. Okay, this is good. So it was just a very inviting place to be. And then once I realized that we get to touch the equipment, which you don't get to do at some colleges, like at Northwestern, I heard people didn't get to touch equipment until they were juniors. I said, what? Well, how are you going to learn it? And so I found a very nice home here. And coming from Chicago, which is where I'm from, that first 6 weeks was a real big adjustment. It was quiet, and there was nothing happening after 8 o'clock, and like there was no music I could listen to. Like, what is this? but by the end of 4 years, I was like, I got to go back to Chicago. So noisy. So, so yeah, it's a great place. I really like it here.
Perfect. And Laura, you mentioned that you and Karl were friends for like over 30 years, and you guys actually went to school here together.
Yeah, he was a class behind me.
Why is
in
it
so many ways.
Yeah, why is it so important?
I guess she wants to point out who would be the... I didn't say that though, but anyway.
Go on, Brooke.
Yeah, why is it so important to maintain those relationships that you meet in college?
Well, I mean, the foundation of ours was friendship, but we pushed each other. We pushed each other. I mean, we wrote letters because that was the 80s. That's what we did to stay in touch with friends. And
our letters were about the David Letterman show.
Yeah, we did. We
would
watch
things.
It
was brand new back then. And we were watching David Letterman, and did you see the episode? Oh, blah, blah. What you guys do now on your phone, texting back and forth, we had to do and waited a week to get a response.
But we talked about jobs we applied to. So for me first with Karl, what was important was that we pushed each other. We challenged each other. We kept our dreams alive by holding each other up, that kind of stuff. But it was, you know, I think I've been in touch with people also who maybe weren't as close of friends. I mean, I stay at his house with his wife and his daughter when I'm in LA. I don't stay at the hotel when that my company puts me up at most of the time. But that, I mean, we are very, very close friends. But there's other people from Oshkosh that I've stayed in touch with. And it's just so important. This industry is so small. It really is. It is. You wouldn't think it would be. And I guess if you look at the numbers, it's not. But everybody knows somebody who knows somebody who knows somebody who went to Oshkosh. So that's why it's important.
And you never know when your friend is going to know someone who has a project that you could work on, or know someone who's looking for somebody who could do what you do. It is really important to keep those contacts open and available. I just worked on a project just recently that a friend of mine said, oh, you know, we're looking for a voice for this project. You do voiceover? I said, yeah, I could do that for you. And boom, I got a job out of that just because I happened to call someone on the phone just to talk, not necessarily for a job, but just keeping in touch with each other is really important. So.
Absolutely. Let's talk about everyone's involvement outside of the classroom. What RTF student organizations were you involved in as a student? Joe?
Oh, I hate to say it this way, but I was involved in very few organizations outside of RTF. I was very much a radio nerd and a hermit when I was here. I was in the studios working anytime, all the time, recording anything that I could, any project I could get my hands on. And anything out in the field as well. And would bring it back to the station at all crazy hours, 2 a.m., 5 a.m. When the studios were completely empty, I was always in the studios whipping up something and working on something.
Get your best work done late at night up there.
I mean, I graduated in 3.5 years. I mean,
Wow.
I kind of flew through, and I was really determined just to immediately get right into what I wanted to do from the start. Now, the minors that I had in college were delightful detours and still continue to help me to this day. And I'm glad I was very much involved in those. I started out as an advanced composition minor, lots of creative writing. Had a wonderful professor named Paul Klemp who encouraged me to be a better writer, who encouraged me to write term papers without the letter E. All the way through. Just really madcap ideas in writing that continue to inspire my work today to make as many detours in your work as possible. And then I became a business minor later on. But I'd say outside of those two things, I was just RTF all the way obsessed at all times.
Perfect. Student organizations are a big part of involvement in the major, but let's switch to classroom experience. Was there or what was your favorite class project that you guys worked on as a student, and why? Karl, start us off.
Favorite project that we worked on? Well, I think it was, we would get to like host, you produce the show. It was called, is it still called Good Morning Oshkosh or something like that? We would get to produce the segments. And I remember that I produced a couple of music videos back when music videos were very, very new. And I did a parody of Stevie Wonder and Paul McCartney doing Ebony and Ivory.
Yeah.
And that was kind of wild because I dressed up like Stevie Wonder, and my friend Joe Schneider dressed up like Paul McCartney, and he actually kind of looked like him. And we sat at a piano right there and shot this thing, and it was not great. But then when I saw it playing in the student union and people were like around the TV and watching it, I said, oh my gosh, people are looking at me, oh my God. But it was fun because I realized I could see the power of what we do in this business to entertain people. And so we did another video, which was a takeoff of Phil Collins' You Can't Hurry Love. And I dressed up like Phil Collins, but I was wearing a dress because I was the Supremes doing You Can't Hurry Love.
Yeah.
And I was just embarrassed the whole time, and I thought, well, no one's really going to see this because it's just for the class. And then it was in the student union again, and people were pointing, oh my God, that's you, that's you, that's you. But they weren't laughing in a bad way, they were laughing in a good way. So
I was still trying to put that together. How does one dress as Phil Collins in a dress?
well, because Phil Collins was singing You Can't Hurry Love.
Oh, I know, but
Oh,
I'm
yeah.
trying to figure out what that looks like.
Oh, it didn't look good. Trust me, it didn't look good. But you know, it was the fact that you were able to do new things here and challenge yourself and try in a way that you don't always get, and sometimes you don't push yourself when you're in school. Sometimes you do the work and you think that's all you need to do, and then you leave. And really, you guys, it is about what you bring to the table besides what's on the piece of paper. Every audition that I get, it's because I did more than what they asked for. Or I said it in a way they went, oh, that was interesting, I've never seen that before. It is really about being yourselves, but pushing yourself to do it a little bit more, give a little bit more.
Joe, you were talking about a different minor that you also had with your RTF major. Lori, did you have another minor or major that you also worked on?
No, I focused strictly on this, but I spent a lot of times exploring all three of the disciplines and concentrating just on those. Like I rarely had a TV course in the same semester as a radio course.
Sure.
Or something like that. I really tried to find my comfort zone, and truthfully, I didn't find it until I hit the professional world. But I didn't. I wanted to just kind of specialize in one area in radio, TV, film, and treat the whole thing as a major, but have a specialty rather than a minor.
Sure. And did you work on a specific project that you really loved to work on?
Oh, it was our senior film, it was my senior film. It was the culminating project for whatever film course that was. Ron was our cinematographer. Mm-hmm. Karl was the producer. Mm-hmm. I was the writer. And we had a whole crew and cast of classmates, and it was just a gas. It was so much fun. And then the screening was fun, inviting our friends, and it was terrifying and fun, and I learned a ton about trusting your crew and your teammates and all that kind of stuff there on that project.
Absolutely.
And integrity. From a crew member who didn't exhibit it. Yeah. But I mean, the lessons are always there. You just got to find them. And I think that's why that one was so important to me.
Sure. Well, student orgs and classroom experience are definitely important, but we all know that internships also give great insight to the industry and open a lot of doors. Did you have any internships while you were here, Joe?
Yes, I did Fox 11 for a summer as an intern. And the only thing that, well, I shouldn't say the only thing. I learned lots of things at Fox 11, again, about integrity. But I also learned very quickly that the TV news business was not where my heart was set. And I'm glad I did that because I found myself standing on a county highway covering a milk truck that had tipped over and spilled. And I thought, whew, this is soul-sucking. So I'll step away from this, and the next summer and winter, I interned with WIXX, WNFL, as it was then called in Green Bay, and quickly got myself back on track and spent probably the next year there as an intern and then part-time before moving on to my full-time career soon after.
Perfect. Yeah, so
Yeah.
internships are very important in this
Mm-hmm.
industry. Laura, did you
Absolutely.
have one?
I didn't, and that was due to the fact that I was one of 6 kids. 3 of us were in college at the same time. Two of my sisters in private schools, and me here at the state university, where it wasn't quite as expensive. But I couldn't afford it. I could not afford to give up any of my summer. I had to earn money for the next year. I could not afford to do something during the school year to take away from my academics because I couldn't afford to go more than 4 years. I really could. I mean, I think I graduated with precisely the amount of credits with 0 money remaining, but I did it.
Yeah.
But that was, I mean, that sounds like an excuse, I know, but that was my economic reality, that I could not afford to go to. And in my era, there were no paid internships. There are now, but in my era, there were not, that I knew of anyway.
In the 1990s, there was still no paid internships.
Yeah.
And I was in the same boat as she was, by the way. The reason I went to 3.5 years and got out as quickly as I could and out into the workforce is I ran out of money.
Yeah.
I knew I had to get those credits and get done and wrap it up because I paid for my college entirely. So.
Yeah, my internship was done here, my first one here in Oshkosh with Michael Cooney, Workforce Communications. He hired me to work on projects that were for business colleges, like the business college videos, you know. So call Mr. Business College today, 1-800-922. And I did one of those. I was on camera for one, but then he actually let me produce one, which was kind of cool. And that was, I think, a music video as well, because I was really into music videos. And
They were new then.
yeah, they were. That was like the new way of communicating. And then I went from there to an internship in Chicago, where I worked at the public radio station, WBEZ, when WBEZ was pretty brand new, and I worked on a show that was for kids, where it taught kids about radio. It was called Question Show. And I left there and came back after I graduated from college and found a job there and spent 11 years on the radio, which is really funny because Robert Town, who was the head of the radio department back then, said, "You're going to work in radio, aren't you?" I said, "No, who works in radio? No, man, TV, it's TV. You should work in radio." I said,
Who works in radio?
"Yeah, who works in radio?"
Useless medium.
Exactly.
Suckers.
So, right, exactly. Oh, wait, that's what you do, right? No, wait, sorry. No,
TV's
but
all right.
no.
It's okay.
I
A few
worked
less
in
letters.
all. I like all of the media because it's just it's another way to express ourselves. Even as I got into radio, I found you can tell stories and create pictures with your radio that you don't do with TV. When you TV, everybody's looking at you and they see what you look like when you're talking. It's better when you're behind that microphone and you can talk and, you know, get intimate and let's play this next song. This one's going out for all the special people out there, you know. And then working in film is so precise because it is. There aren't a whole bunch of takes. Like you get it right and then you move on, but you rehearse it a bunch of times and then you lay it down. Is that the take we want? Good. You keep on moving. TV is a little more free form, and radio it's just happening. It happens organically, and that's what's really great about all of what you do and all of what we do is that we are affecting people and entertaining people in a way that lasts longer than just saying hi. Sometimes it's got a lasting effect. So yeah, I parlayed that my internship in radio to a job, and I've always found that internships are a great way to learn about what they do, not just doing the job. Once again, you got to do more than what they're asking you to do, and help out where you can't, they're not asking you to help out, and find out what's happening in the office, because eventually they'll say, you know, I noticed that you're good. You know, come back and see me when you're done with your internship, and that's what will happen. If you do good work, people are paying attention, and if you do bad work, people are paying attention. I will stress this, what Lori said, it is a small business, and everybody knows somebody who's connected to somebody. So if you're a jerk, it's going to get around. So be good. You know what I mean? Be on your best, because nobody wants to work with a jerk. And if they do work with a jerk, they'll work with you once and never again. So always be at your best.
I'd like to jump off on a point that you said earlier about the other media. And a moment ago, I was obviously giving the impression that I am very audio obsessed. And that is true. But I don't think my production in audio, in particular in fictional audio, in storytelling audio, in the imagery of audio, would be nearly as strong if it were not for the film and the television elements of the radio, TV, film major. I know in my day, and probably it is the same here, all of you probably have a certain element of the major that you are particularly driven, inspired, focused on. Steal and swipe and pilfer from the other two parts of the major and bring it back to where your heart lies, and you will find that your heart is better for it. And you'll produce stronger work as a result of it. I think for my radio productions that are fictional, that are storytelling driven and have scenery, I think I'm able to better set up those scenes now and fill every character's position in the radio story better because of the time I spent writing scripts and shooting and being involved in television productions. It was a very fruitful time. It still is.
Yeah. Do you have any tips that any of you would offer to students who are looking for internships?
Play.
Go to the places that you like and ask, and sometimes they may just want you to do something that, I know they're not supposed to hire you for no pay, but you know, offer to do whatever you can just to learn it or just hang out with someone. And if you do a good work, once again, they will call you back to do more. It just doesn't hurt to ask. You know, there may not be places that are looking for internships, but if you keep calling, if there's one place that you really want to work and that you know they do good stuff, keep going back to them and just call them up every once in a while. Hey, anything happening here? Anything happening here? Because it is true that out of sight, out of mind happens very, very easily in this business. If they don't see you, they're not thinking about you, because there's a lot of us out there who are looking for jobs. So the more that you make your face known or make your voice known, or, oh yeah, there was a kid that just called in here the other day. What was that kid's name? If you happen to call back again that next week, so glad you called. I was just looking for you. So, you know, it's being tenacious but also being kind of open-minded about it. Don't go to the same places that everybody goes for an internship. I worked as a janitor in the summertime, and it happened to be in the same building that Foot, Cone & Belding was, the advertising agency. I got like spare tapes that I would use for my demos back then. I mean, and I got to look at scripts, and I saw how scripts were written, and you know how they would break down the storylines for their commercials. So it was a great experience, and it wasn't the typical way to get into. Like, I didn't get an internship at Foot, Cone & Belding, but I kind of did, because I went in through the back door at night when nobody else was there. So you know,
my advice is reach out to alumni, reach out to us, reach out to people. Ask Claire who works in the sports industry, you know, who works in corporate communications, and have her get in touch with us. When I was my last few years at Turner Broadcasting, when I was on staff, that is, I'm still very connected and do a lot of work with them, but my last few years, I got a number of UW-Oshkosh students, internships. I got them internships in the sports department, which is not what they wanted, but they parlayed their relationships there into the entertainment divisions. Several of them are still there and doing fine work.
Absolutely.
It's all about being flexible.
Every internship that I was involved in my college days came from me goofing around with somebody else's equipment, essentially. And that's what I meant earlier when I said, I just blurted out play. When I got the Polka Station gig because I was in forensics. Somebody saw me goofing around in forensics, said, you should try DJing on the weekends at this Polka Station. They occasionally hire high school students. Great, I'll take it. I got the internship at WIXX because somebody noticed me goofing around in the production room at WAUN in Kewanee and noticed that I had some chops in editing and putting together production. So I put that into my application for Midwest Family and was accepted that way. So just continuing to sort of play with what it is that you're interested in, playing with the gear. Sometimes just doors open when people notice what you're doing and what you're good at.
Mm-hmm. All right, and now let's find out about your experiences getting started in the industry. What was it like searching for your first job after college? Where did you start?
Well, as I said, I started in radio, so I started, well, I looked in TV, but, you know, TV is not easy to get to, especially if you want to be on air. It was very, you know, one thing that I learned when I moved out to LA is that once a show has a host, it doesn't need another host. So if you want to go out and be a host, well, then you got to find some place where they need a host. Access Hollywood, oh wait, they're looking for a host now, I think. So that was not the way to go. So you have to go in through other ways. So yeah, I started off in public radio, and it grew from there because I was just like a reporter, and I said, well, I don't really want to work in radio, so I'm just going to do this for a little while. And I just kept staying there longer and longer and longer, and learning more and moving to a different part of the department, and I eventually became the production manager, and I was producing all the promos, which is something that I really liked doing, and didn't realize that I liked doing it until I started doing it, and I opened myself up to that world. And that's why I keep saying be flexible, because there's more to learn. Like once you've gotten your stuff here, you're going to learn a whole lot more once you get out into the real world. So always, always be willing to learn something new. It will never hurt you to learn something new. And if you have the job as the boss, learn what the people are doing underneath you, because it's always good to know what everybody is doing in your department so that you can then direct them better. It's always better.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
What role did networking play in getting a job? Like Laura, you were saying how someone who knows someone who knows someone who knows someone who went to Oshkosh.
Well, my first job in the business was at CNN back in 1983. CNN launched in 1980, so nobody really knew what it was. I mean, it had not a reputation for breaking news. It certainly didn't have the reputation it has now, which I prefer not to associate with. But at that time, it didn't have any breaking news chops, you know, or anything like that, if I may steal your word. Mm-hmm. It was just 24-hour news. So they were looking for people, and Chuck Berry, who is an alum also, and he also got his master's here, was the first of us, if you will. He got a job in Atlanta at CNN, and he reached, you know, we remained friends, and he reached out to me and a few other people he knew mutually and said, they're looking for people who can put a sentence together, who can point a camera, who can, you know, the basics. So that was key, having that relationship with Chuck. Could have been anybody, but it was, in fact, it was him. And had I not had that relationship with him, I probably wouldn't be sitting here today, because once I got to CNN, I realized I'm a news junkie, but I don't want to work in it. And I wandered around the building till I found something I did want to do. And I ran across a friend of mine who was preparing graphics for Atlanta Braves baseball and said, sit down, I'll show you what I'm doing. I traveled with the Atlanta Braves for 10 years. The good years and the bad years, or in my case it was the bad years and the good years. And worked on many other sports events and sports telecasts and things like that. So it was because of Chuck that I started. It was because of what he said about pay attention to everything, what's around you, that I continued.
I would like to be a proponent of both traditional networking and unorthodox networking. And by that I mean, my first entry into the industry was through traditional networking. I had someone at my internship at IXX in Green Bay who knew someone at a small group of radio stations in Marshfield, and my first gig out of college was as a news journalist in the really huge media mecca of Marshfield, Wisconsin. And I spent about a year and a half there, and I felt lost. I felt like this, doing journalism in the afternoons at the station wasn't exactly what I had in mind. And I remembered this from Fox 11, why am I doing this to myself again? So I stopped that. I moved to Madison, Wisconsin, and I immediately went through, again, traditional networking channels. I talked to Randall. I talked to several others who were working at Wisconsin Public Radio and said, I'd like a shot here. Do you have any openings on the weekend for opening announcer shifts? And thankfully they auditioned me, and I started reading weather on the weekends. And that was nice and all, and I could have stayed working part-time at Wisconsin Public Radio forever, but this is where the unorthodox networking comes in. As I mentioned, I was totally interested in sound, and I was kind of going from audio production house to audio production house in the Madison area, just offering my talents. Do you have any openings? I'll do anything. I'll volunteer. I'll do some free work for you for a while, just to see if I could get my foot in the door somewhere. And I met someone at the Capitol Square one weekend who was doing a broadcast, again for WPR. Her name is Karl T. And she is now my guru. She is my mentor now. Because initially, I could have networked with her the same way I did with everybody else in Madison. I could have given her a business card or something like that. But Karl and I started talking about bands and rock and cool stuff. And I said, I'm going to make you a mixtape. So I made her a mixtape of British indie rock. And she, in turn, made me a mixtape of Brian Eno. And we just kind of carried on like that for a while. And she knew that I already had got my foot in the door at WPR, but she blew that door wide open. She gave me opportunity after opportunity and after opportunity, because we built a friendship. It wasn't networking. It was something more than that. And I would not have gotten as far along as I did in the public media world were it not for her. And she's still opening doors for me today. I mean, she's going to retire, I think, any day now, and I know that she'll probably refer me into the position that she has now, because she's just been there for me since day one. So network, by all means do, but try to find amongst that group of networking those people who are really special to you, and build friendships with those people, really deep ones that are more than just media, and just watch as the doors continue to open for you. It was a really wonderful thing.
Yeah.
Yes, and thank you for your insights in getting started in this competitive industry. Now, I'd love to hear about your careers, both past and present. What is the most exciting or rewarding aspect of your current position? Anyone can start.
I'll begin with rewarding. When I do my shows for Turner Sports, I work with the same people, year in, year out. Obviously not every show, same people. That's family. That is family. We've seen one another grow, age, get fat, get thin, lose hair, gain hair. We've seen career paths change. We've seen children born. And that's so important to me. It's, I came from a big family, as I mentioned early on. And now working for the Pac-12 network, we do 850 shows a year, 850 shows across the 12 member institutions in the Pac-12 conference. It's hard. It's really, really hard to create that family atmosphere with doing a show where today I'm working with this producer, today I'm working with that technical director, and next week it's all new people, whatever. So while I love working for the Pac-12 network, it's awesome. I get to do all these great sports and stuff. What's most rewarding to me is that family feel, that family culture that I have with Turner Sports, TNT, and TBS.
Sure.
What is really rewarding for me, I came to acting after having another career, and I left extra to do it a little more full time. And acting is really hard, and there's not a lot of jobs, and you never know if you're going to get another job. But just recently, I have been called in by several casting directors who say, "We love your work. We know you. We're always thinking of you. We're always wanting to try and bring you in." And it's a gratifying feeling to realize that you audition with thousands of people every year who are just trying to get that one little gig. And I've done it enough now that people are saying, "I know who you are and I like your work." And it's not the job that makes it the great. It is the connection that you've made with casting people who you don't realize that you've made a connection with. Normally when you go in for an audition, you know, you've got your sides and they're behind the camera and they read and you're done and you walk out. But they've made a mental connection. They know who you are. They're paying attention. They like what you do. So it is immensely gratifying to know that I've made a connection with people on a level that I didn't realize I was making a connection on. You guys don't know when you're giving back energy to people. If you give back positive energy, you're getting it back. It may not come immediately, but people appreciate it, and people will remember that. If you give out negative energy, it's going to bounce right back at you. So if you can be positive, especially in this business, as I said, it's small, and nobody wants to work with someone who's a jerk unless you're like super, 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 super talented, and then they'll do it for a while, and then eventually it'll all blow up in your face and they don't want to work with you anymore. So that is the most gratifying part to me, is that I've been doing it long enough now that there are people who recognize me, and I go on a set, and my buddy Ron back there who works on camera, we were working on the same show but not the same day. It's just fun to walk on the set and you know someone, it's family. Like you walk, the cameraman, hey, oh, I remember you. You worked on Scandal. Yeah, I was on that show, and we also did Desperate Housewives together, or whatever. You know, it's just nice to know that you can continue to fight for your dream long enough to make it a part of someone else's. Your dream is now a part of someone else's reality. Their reality is to make your dream happen. So that's really the great part of it.
Absolutely. And in this industry, there's a lot of challenges to overcome in any aspect. How do you stay passionate about your work? Joe, we can start with you.
I'm going to meld together the last two questions.
Sure.
How I stay passionate about my work is the same thing that I feel so blessed to be doing it. Is I'm a TD, I'm an engineer. I'm usually near the end of the production process. I wasn't there when the script was written. I wasn't there when the talent was put into place. I was there to make sure that these people are recorded well and that the production sounds great. So the way I see it is I feel like I've been entrusted to help realize the vision that producers have when they start out on the path of creating the show that they're working on. I'm working on a radio play right now that's going to air in a couple of weeks. And in the radio play, the script called for a time machine, but not a recent time machine, a 1950s time machine. Well, what does that sound like? So I immediately dug into samples of like ham radio and really old gadgetry and put all of those sounds together into an object that felt like something that someone from 1954 would have invented to come to our time through a radio, which is what the script called for. And the fact that this scriptwriter handed that to me and said, help me figure it out. Help me make this sound real. I feel very lucky to be doing that. And I do that on lots of different productions simultaneously. Every single day, a new idea will come to my plate, and I have to bring what I can to it to make it a radio story, or make it a radio play, or a live show, or a concert. And that's just a wonderful thing. And that ignites the passion. A new project has come here. How do we realize it? How do we make this memorable in people's ears? How do we trigger fireworks in people's brains? It's great.
Sure. Lori, how has the evolution of the media affected these types of careers?
Well, mine in particular, it's forced me to reinvent myself almost every month. The technology improves in many ways. Sometimes it creates job reduction, though. An example, I've worked on 9 Olympic Games. The last 3 I have not been on site for, yet I might as well have been, because I'm in a control room and I'm bringing in feeds from all the venues, all these kinds of things. And you just have to be prepared for that. You have to stay knowledgeable about the technology. You have to, no question. Whether it's reading trades, whether it's talking to engineering, whether it's just being savvy about it. Just keep reinventing yourself.
And for on-air people, if you want to be on air, the world is your oyster. As long as you have an iPhone and YouTube and Vimeo and all these other places that we didn't have before, all we could do was get to someone else to do it. Now you have the opportunity to produce things on your own. I just did a series for ABC Digital called This Isn't Working, and the woman Lisa Schwartz, who is the star of the show, got her start doing YouTube videos, and she has millions of followers. And that is like that's the new world out there. You can do it yourself. You don't actually need to have someone else give you permission to do what you want to do. You just have to do it well, and people will follow you. So.
Perfect.
Technical people, my advice would be in this, because in the technical side of media, it is overwhelming to feel as though you have to keep up with new technology. In fact, it's nigh on impossible, because new things are coming at such a rate that it's just so hard to keep up with everything. Focus on creating with one object and piece of technology at a time, and do that production with that new technology. Just take an advantage to try one new object with every production that you're doing, and don't feel that you have to read the trade magazine and buy all 12 of these new gadgets. Just one thing at a time, and the new technology will come to you. In fact, the most important ones will, because you'll notice that your colleagues are beginning to work on this, and you'll want to incorporate that too. So just one step at a time.
Absolutely. In a few moments, we're going to start taking questions from our audience. Shortly, we will be passing microphones around the audience. While we wait for our first audience question, though, let's talk about your specific areas of expertise. Lori, what was it like working on the Olympics, and what did you specifically do? You kind of mentioned that the last 3 years you weren't on site.
Correct. Yeah. What I've done since I've been working for NBC, I did 3 Olympics for TNT, who did them in the early 90s. I was the tape associate director for that. But for NBC, you talk about area of expertise. What my job has been for that is I'm a timing AD. Timing ADs can be someone with a stopwatch, someone with a spreadsheet that does that does timing calculations. NBC has a piece of intellectual property called the Timer. Timer is a wonderful, magical computer program tool, and only about 9 of us in the world know how to run it. And basically, I take whatever programming is going on, live, taped. Oh, this volleyball match only went 3 sets, and we programmed for 5. We formatted for 5. You know, my job is to take the puzzle pieces, juggle them around, and bring a 9-hour show into time. Perfect. Very difficult. Well. Anybody can do it, but we're not giving up our seats just yet. I got a few more games left in me.
Absolutely. Joe, what are some of the biggest challenges starting your own business in this industry?
I started Mad Men or Multimedia in 2012, and it is a growing business. It's really tiny right now. And the reason why I decided to start is I felt that public media, as awesome as it is, could use a little more chaos. A little more of the stuff that inspired me when I got into radio. There was a show here called Cross Currents. Is it still around? Probably not. And it was total free format. It was, you know, playing sounds in 4 different studios at once and like combining them into a wild collage. And I realized that podcasting, the wild west that it is, could use more than just people talking about things. It could use art. So I took all of my experience in music and sampling and started building shows that felt more like collage, felt more like the stuff that I wanted to hear. It doesn't make a lot of money. It's not supposed to make a lot of money. But the first podcast that I did, people noticed because it was pretty in your face, and it sampled from everywhere, and it made points. It made really hard points. And it got aired in Chicago. It was played at festivals, and I was just surprised at the reaction that it was getting, and it was wonderful. And I've moved on from that since then to another podcast that has that same sort of philosophy, again, of sampling spaces and turning it into sort of story songs. And still working on that now. I've got my 4th demo done, and now we're going to work on a 5th one. I'm going to sample a Donald Trump rally and turn it into a song, so let's do that.
Wow.
Perfect.
Okay.
Let's go to our first audience question.
Excuse me, my name is Anthony, and I have a question mainly for Karl.
Hey, Anthony.
Being an actor, what do you look for most in a director? Obviously, you can't pick your director because they're already picked before you get chosen, but when you go on set, what do you think is somebody who's a good director?
Well, as a supporting actor, when you're the lead, you have a very close relationship with the director. The director comes onto a show. You know, each series has a director who will direct several episodes within the series. So they have a close relationship with all the stars. So when you're a supporting actor, like a guest star or co-star, not always is there a connection made with the director. But when there is, it is always nice to have them, number one, acknowledge that they know who you are, what you did in your audition. They know they know what you've done. And then after you've done a take, give a yay or an A. Sometimes that's all we want, is like, did I do okay? Was that good? Because a lot of times directors are only focused on their stars. And really the whole piece is everybody who's in that scene. So pay attention to all the people in your project. And some of the other really great directors I've worked with have given me the freedom to take it another step. I was on the show Parenthood, and I played a therapist. And the director said, I'm sure you've all seen Parenthood before. It's very, very talky show. And part of the reason it's talky is because they say fill in the blank spaces. So if the script says, say hi to Lori, you don't just say hi to Lori, you say, hey, what's going on? You know, you fill it in. So he said, as the therapist, we're going to start the scene. You just kind of talk like a therapist, and then we'll start the scene. And so they said action, and I just started asking questions and doing what you're doing, and I was doing it for like 2-3 minutes, and then they finally started the scene. And when they yelled cut, somebody said, are you a real therapist? I said, no, I'm just doing what he said to do. And it was fun. It made that experience so much more exciting for me as a co-star, because they trusted me to do something and make it happen. And I stepped up to the plate, and I, knocked it out of the park, I think. But, and then when it comes to the cut, it was pretty much what we had said on the script. But there were a couple of places where I filled it in, and they left it in. So it is being trusted to do what you're hired to do, and then being able to pull it off.
Perfect. Let's go to our next question.
I have a question for Lori. When you're working with like the Pac-12 network, so you have to work with 12 different institutions. Do you find yourself acting differently with different institutions, like with what they bring to the table, or how do you kind of work with the differences you encounter there?
It all depends, frankly, on their cooperation. A lot of the schools, University of Oregon, for example, has an incredible, well-funded broadcasting department. And they create their own shows, they create their own packages, they create their own, and everybody does their own scoreboard shows and things like that. But at the University of Oregon, well, if you follow college football, it's big. They do everything big, and they're well-funded. All right. That's an example of someone who really doesn't want us there. They'd really rather just do it themselves. But we have a mission that the Pac-12 Conference has created the network to speak for, yes, each of the universities, but we have to preach the way of the Pac-12 Conference. And so it's a matter of their cooperating with us more than us cooperating with them that makes it a successful relationship.
Let's go to our third question.
Hi, my name is Deanna. My question is for the whole panel. For recent grads, what advice do you have for them when they go out to look for jobs to make themselves stand out?
Joe, you want to start us off?
Oof, make yourself stand out. I hate to sound like a broken record, but really, it really does. Radio is really very competitive medium. There are not a lot of jobs in radio anymore, especially in commercial radio, and public radio is highly, highly competitive. And the thing that I've learned and kept myself alive doing over the years is just continuing with that sense of play that I've always had since the very beginning, trying new things, trying different things, putting it out there, creating the podcast, throwing it up on SoundCloud, sharing it with contacts that I know, trying to get it aired in different locations. And some of those things won't make you money, but they'll get you noticed. Oh, you're the guy that did the really weird Trayvon Martin remix. I remember that. Whoa, that was pretty intense. How would you like to do this? And just try to get your work heard even though it's not coming with a paycheck. That's really risky, I know, but sometimes you have to. You just have to continue to express yourself creatively at what it is that you do in whatever medium that you're working in to make sure that your talent is on display. So if you're in between jobs, continue creating. Get stuff out there. Continue offering your services to people and create.
Perfect. Let's go to our final question.
Hi. This is another open-ended question for everybody. So the other day, we had a behind-the-scenes type of thing for one of our shows, Sea Life 2.0. And there was like a 30-second bit that was put on YouTube, and I was in it, and it was like my first thing, and so I cried. What was that? What was that? What was that moment for you? Like, when did you have that? Oh my gosh, I'm actually doing this.
I've got a great story for you.
Yeah.
Okay. WAUN Polka Station, right? Small town radio. I get there for my first day on the job post-training. And I thought, I'm going to do like a short shift. I'm learning the ropes here. I'm not exactly sure what I'm doing. I walked in, the secretary behind the desk said, okay, here's the key. This is how you're going to lock the station tonight. This is how you punch in. This is how you punch out. Here's the sheet. Good luck. Bye. And she walked out, and I was the last person there. I closed the station that night, and I was terrified, absolutely terrified that I was going to screw something up. I had to shut off a high-powered transmitter. I'd never done that before. No one showed me how to do it, but I just kind of followed the little bits of writing that was on this big piece of equipment that I never touched before, and just went switch by switch by switch. And I made it through that first night, and thank God. And I didn't tape myself that night. I'm sure if I had taped myself, I'd be talking even faster than I'm talking right now. And I talk pretty fast. So yeah, trial by fire, and I felt a lot like you. I wanted to cry when it was over.
Karl, do you have a story?
The first time I heard myself on the radio in Chicago, I was working at the public radio station, WBEZ, and I had to produce a piece about, it was for a show called The Question Show, as I said, and it was about how you make soap, I think, or something like that. And I just remember like going home and turning it on. It was on at 2:30 in the afternoon. Nobody's listening to the station. But I was listening, and I called my mom. I said, Mom, I was just on the radio, just on the radio. Oh, I just missed it. Oh. But she was always really supportive about listening to that stuff. And when you hear yourself, and it's not coming out of your mouth like it's coming out of something else, it's the weirdest thing in the world. Like, that's my voice. That's what I sound like? Oh my gosh. Like, I'm sure if I listen to this now, I will be shocked with what my voice sounds like. So yeah, it was that first moment of hearing myself, and I had made an edit. Well, this was the best part. Okay, so in the piece, I had to edit something, and this is back when we had reel-to-reel tape. So you had to cut the tape, and put it up here, and then you put them together, splice it together. Didn't sound right. Put it back together, and I couldn't get this edit right. And I left it, and I came back the next day, and it had to air that day. I couldn't get it right, and I took the piece, and I put it in there, and I stuck it and ran through. That's backwards, but it worked. That was like the greatest moment when I realized you can do other things with sound that they didn't tell you in school.
Absolutely.
So there you go.
Quick point.
Well,
it's great, by the way, when no one is listening and watching.
Yeah.
I mean, really, hey, Grandma, did you hear me on the radio? No. Great, then I can make the mistakes and learn by myself and not have people criticize me. Yeah. And that's okay.
Well, unfortunately, we are out of time. I'd like to thank the talented members of the panel, Joe, Lori, and Karl, for joining us today and sharing knowledge and insights about the media industry. You certainly give us a lot to think about as we continue to plan for our careers. And I'd also like to thank the professors and students who contributed to this year's Pro Perspective panel. Finally, I'd like to thank you joining us live on 90.3 WRST FM Oshkosh and Titan TV channel 9757. I'm Brooke Bayer, and this has been the 7th Annual Radio TV Film Pro Perspectives panel at UW Oshkosh. We'll see you next year.